Welcome to Huddle Easy Talks, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Lizette Day, and when Nurses Care Hub invited me to moderate today's Huddle Talks with Dr. Dorothy Dolko, I knew I had to do it. Mental World Health Day was yesterday, and I knew this was an important topic to bring to our nursing community. Today we chat with Dr. Dorothy Dolko. Dr. Dolko is core faculty staff at the College of Health Science, College of Nursing, graduate program at Walden University. She has over 30 years experience as an advanced practice nurse, hospital administrator, educator, and researcher. Dr. Dolko earned her PhD in cancer nursing research from the University of Utah in Salt Lake City in 2007. She has a postgraduate certification in bioethics and medical humanities from New York University, and she holds a master's in science from Stony Brook University in Stony Brook, New York. Dr. Dolko, welcome to Nurses Care Hub. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I wanted to start with the introduction today because you talk about how nurses at all levels, specialties really, experience emotional depletion, especially now, more than 8 months into being in the front lines of a global pandemic. Tell me a little bit, what do you think that's important for nurses, people in general, to build personal hardiness and care of self?
I think that's basically it. Nurses, nurse practitioners, nurse administrators, across the board, we're caregivers. We tend to be the helpers. And while that's wonderful and great, there still has to be a care of oneself outside of that. And as a profession that's dominated by women, we also tend to be the family caregivers. So I think it's important to be sure to care for self. I also think in terms of what we have done in these past months and what we should do more of as nurses and NPs and others in our profession is connect to purpose. That's really important to find the joy at work. And I did that in transitioning to cancer care probably 20 so years ago through a series of events that led me there. But connecting to that purpose that I believe in and feel passionate about is important. And I think we've seen connection to purpose in COVID-19 with the relationships that we've built with colleagues within the profession. It's important to have a personal path and an organizational path. Sometimes they meet, they can't always be synergized, but it's important to establish both of those roads to care for oneself. There are a lot of opportunities in organizations for workshops and other things. So are we really caring and compassionate? Yes, we are, to a fault as nurses, and it's partly why we choose the profession, because it's who we are, partly why we stay in it, because we believe in it. But this chronic exposure to stress and to death and illness, sometimes we internalize that, and that's certainly been part of the COVID-19 response. Some of the challenges are the acuities of patients. That's the feedback I've gotten. New drug deliveries, research and clinical trials now integrated into life with COVID-19 for the nurse and the physician. So it can be challenging. The technology, cost containment, and lateral violence and bullying, I think that's pretty important. We don't always take care of ourselves, nor do we nurture one another as nurses across the board. So doing that helps us to be fulfilled, connecting to purpose, and acknowledging that we're human. And we did choose this caring profession, but that includes us.
As you know, World Mental Health Day was observed yesterday, and every year on October 10th. So it's perfectly just so opportune. This day is to raise awareness really on mental health for all working on mental health issues, from the individual to all stakeholders, as you mentioned, organizational. Is there anything that has caught you by surprise when you share Who Took My Joy, especially from nurses during this particular time?
I don't know that I should be surprised by it, but I probably was. And I put up this schematic here because what the feedback I've gotten from nurses is that this pandemic and the resulting needs of patients and of all of us in society has fostered relationships interdisciplinary. within hospitals. There is no opportunity not to work with everyone. It's sort of, I started my career in emergency services as an ER nurse. You didn't get through a day in trauma unless you worked together. There was very little hierarchy. Everyone pitched in. And I think some of that gets lost and had gotten lost outside of this pandemic, specifically in certain practice areas. But this has brought this camaraderie back. You don't get through a day without your colleagues, whoever they may be, physician, nurse, NP, respiratory therapist, or other. And the work environment, the patient or client environment, and the personal environment really intersect, and there has to be some quality of life in all of those. And that's what leads to compassion satisfaction. That's when we take the joy, the connectedness to purpose, and that so inspires or sustains us that it negates anything that might be negative. So we'll talk more about definitions and symptoms of burnout and compassion fatigue, but it's important to be satisfied within the workplace. I've also take a moment to mention moral distress. That's come up in some of these, and I think it's important to touch on. In oncology, we deal with moral distress almost every day in the fact that we may not have an advance directive for a dying patient. We may have families that disagree with the wishes of the patient. And we always wish to take ethical and complete actions that also consider our patient. Some of this illness, there is nothing to do for these people, and that's been frustrating for nurses who tend to want to fix, and physicians as well. So you can feel more inadequate in these days just because not a lot of people have not survived, especially on the inpatient. So we have to be careful of self-doubt, not wanting to feel we're in conflict, and lack of confidence, because outcomes are not just our responsibility, and some of them are not avoidable. So understanding that and leveraging your other colleagues for support is really important.
And as advanced practice nurse to really connect everything and highlight what's important in a team of healthcare providers. We're human, and we need to connect for sure. And are nurses finding new ways to connect? And what's their emotional real estate going to these days?
Well, again, I think starting by this connectedness that a team feels in the care of these patients with COVID, and it is even inspired care teams outside of the critical care environment in terms of now having an appreciation for your colleagues. I think Zoom, it sounds simple, but it's become an important part of our lives. And I shared this with another group that my daughter lives about 3,000 miles away and really can't return right now in what she's doing in terms of COVID. We do Zoom every day, and we mentioned the other day that it seems like we see each other every day. There's a connection there. Writing cards, we've lost that art of the written note. That's back. Picking up the phone and not just texting. These are ways that nurses are connecting, FaceTiming, telehealth, telemedicine. Many of our colleagues are doing telehealth visits. It is important. So there's new ways. It's not that we aren't socially connecting. We are and have to. Right. We may not be physically connecting because of the quarantine and other issues that we have.
Yeah, you mentioned note cards. There are greeting cards now that address pandemic, and I haven't seen your face. I miss being within 6 feet from you. It's those little things that connect us as humans for sure. Mm-hmm. Stress, as you know, has been an occupational hazard since the mid-50s. And in fact, it's been cited as a significant health problem. As you know, the nursing role itself is very stressful, from advocating for patients to working long hours to working with short staffing and even access to PPE. What are some factors that contribute to burnout and compassion fatigue, in your opinion?
Well, we'll define compassion fatigue and burnout in an upcoming slide. Here we go. On the left, we talk about burnout and what contributes to it. We watch suffering every day in some way or another. when we care for people. Even in primary care, there can be frustrations with non-compliance. So we see this over and over again. And we become physically and emotionally exhausted as health professionals just because it's one exposure after another. And it's often just that one that really tilts us. So we keep trying, we keep working harder, trying harder. I feel that's the active phase where intervening is important. When we reach compassion fatigue, the exhaustion is so high that the joy is almost unimaginable. The demands are available, the demands that we have are not consistent with the resources available. And you know what? Work less, we become apathetic, absent, helpless, and we have to catch ourselves when we're feeling those first parts before we get to the point where we're apathetic. And those are some of the symptoms. In here, taking it a little deeper specifically, in burnout and compassion fatigue, we really start to feel irritated, depressed, anxious, poor performance ensues, sick calls, errors. We know in research that compassion fatigue and burnout are associated with higher numbers of medical errors for both nurses and physicians. There's headache, there's nausea, it's insomnia, and just difficult to even remain awake and alert in the compassion fatigue phase. And it's important we recognize these and avoid things such as self-medicating. It might be that one extra glass of wine, or maybe it's something to help me relax, or I could use a sleeping pill. We kind of want to fix it. Knowing those triggers, knowing these symptoms, and finding help, whether that be on your own, through your HR department that may have a list of services through your insurance, or whether you take part in some workshops and other things that occur in organizations, including continuing education. It can be so rewarding to learn something new and spend time with colleagues that maybe you don't see every day.
I couldn't agree more. I really think it's important, like you said, to recognize those signs and symptoms. Oftentimes I see and treat colleagues, nurses that I work with, and we always want to point to some physiological ailment, thyroid that's causing the fatigue, irritability, and whatnot. So these are really important signs and symptoms to note. So thank you for highlighting that. What advice do you have for nurses and for strategies to building personal resilience?
Well, I think first it's, this is my indie, by the way. I put this slide up because I read this article. It was an editorial in the New York Times, and it was about someone who really felt overwhelmed in general, had lost all resilience, but found such joy in coming home to her loving and accepting pet. That's my indie, and that's who he is to me. So it's important that we sustain relationships, we foster those, and how you do that is to be open to it. And we need to do a better job of taking care of each other. Physicians do a really good job of that. They tend to mentor, to foster. There's very little blame. One takes up for the other. We don't see that in nursing, and I've certainly seen the trajectory of nursing across the board, including administration and research. So it's in finding a mentor and being a mentor that sometimes I think is a really important way forward. Assessing where you are at, knowing if you are unable to continue at the level that you are, whether that be in hours, then don't sign up for that extra shift. So assessing oneself. Also, the balance of work and of life outside of work is imperative. To know how to maintain that balance, and even in these days when many of us are working more than we did because of the pandemic, there has to be time for stepping away. Staff development activities and resources, professional development opportunities, returning to higher education has certainly been associated with increased compassion satisfaction and decreased fatigue. Personal meetings and professional meetings where you meet up with colleagues across your local area and nationally, and take your lunch. I have found in my own inherent personality from the day I stepped on the unit as a nurse, at the bedside until today, and all across levels. It was hard for me to step away when I was at work, either because I was preparing in between meetings or I wanted to catch up on something here or there. So something as simple as knowing you need to step away and someone will cover that and then you'll do that for them. That's how you build these trusting relationships. And also, this multidisciplinary team at the workplace is key. You learn to appreciate what the other does. And I think that those are pretty important. And the most important is where we started. Because for me, and everything I've observed and read and researched, connecting to purpose, knowing why it is you do what you do. Are you doing something just because you need a paycheck? Well, that's really okay. Many of us do that across our careers and continue to do so today. But is there anything more? Is there something you like being part of? Are you inspired by being in a certain area of practice? Have you read about another? Is there something you wish to do? I found oncology through a very circuitous route as a primary care NP, women's health NP. I was diagnosing patients with early stage cancers. And I really wanted to know what happened to them, because once you diagnose them, they went away to this strange place called oncology. And I said, gee, where do they go? I want to go with them. And the rest, I never left. I turned back, and I found such passion in all of that work. So you really need to connect to that purpose, connect to the people in life that you love, whether that be your furry friends or your family, and really always be someone who's safe to approach. And then people will come and share, and there's reward in that. You've got to find purpose at work and teamwork, compassion, but still having professional boundaries. We can't live every patient's life or experience ourselves the depths that they reach through death and loss. We know it, we feel it, but they can't all be our own, because we can't continue doing that. And then take your time off the unit, take a yoga class. There are some specific things you can do. Get a manicure when you're able. Once again, in this pandemic, even the simple pleasures seem to have been taken away, but there are ways to find virtual yoga and Amazon nail kits that I've purchased for myself.
Yeah, those Amazon nail kits are great. But these are all great takeaways. I think what really resonated with me was really knowing the why you do it, connecting to your why, or reconnecting, because I think all of us have a why. We just need to reconnect with it. So I think that's super important. At this point, we have a question coming in from one of our audience members. So I'm going to go ahead and read that out from Nelson, if you're ready for that. Okay. So what factors or variables influence the chasm between the personal and organizational paths to hardiness or resiliency?
Well, there is a dichotomy between personal and organizational paths. You hope that you join an organization that's mission and vision are aligned with your own. I don't know how many of us, when we go to take a new position, have asked to see the mission and vision of the organization. But it's pretty important, because if nothing there resonates with you, probably not going to connect to purpose within that organization or feel very fulfilled. I think that there are opportunities for bridges to cross the chasm, and that means you're willing to take them. Venture out within the organization for opportunities that they offer for team building, for workshops, as I've mentioned. And resiliency, it comes to us at a time when we need it. Most humans are meant to be resilient, whether they run an organization or they're the CEO or the nurse at the bedside. And we each develop the level of resiliency that we're comfortable with. Can't go through this human condition without being somewhat resilient. You wouldn't be able to keep going as long as we all do. But there comes a point when you can take those bridges across the organization and personal, and the resiliency comes in its own time. And accepting that and knowing that you're human, if you're not quite that resilient yet, and knowing that and feeling okay with it, it's important to have the organization also feel that is okay. Again, taking it back to that mission and vision.
Right. I think connecting to a team that has that same common goal and a mission, like you said, that really helps propel you into a better state of being and better caring for your patients. I think it's important.
I also think that as nurse practitioners, we do learn to do this pretty well because we navigate this nursing person, this foundation who we are, and now we are in the medical model. We're trained in the medical model. We use terms that are the medical model, but it's in keeping that other part of us alive. I think that also helps bridge that. And as nurse practitioners, we kind of do that on a daily basis. We could easily forget the nurse in us in a day where we are prescribing, diagnosing, assessing, and doing all these other physician-related tasks. Thank you, Nelson.
Yeah, you saw the comment. He said he likes your ABCs. I think it's worth recapping the ABCs just for those maybe who may have joined a little later. If you can just quickly, or not quickly, but just summarize ABCs, because I think that is so important in our nursing.
Yeah, I mean, there's literature, and the webinar that we have posted goes through all of those studies, but assess oneself, assess one's relationships at the workplace. That's the A, that's the first part. Know thyself, know relationships, know who you are, where you are, where you want to be. Right. Balance, the work-life balance, the care of self, the accepting that we aren't perfect. No one is. The human condition is pretty universal. No one gets around it. So taking the balance piece. And the third and most important is the C, and that is that connection to purpose. You have to look for those triggers, because often a trigger is what is your connection, and that's why it triggers you. And you learn to explore how you feel about your work, and are you connected to your team? Are you connected to purpose? Is this what you love? It can take a while, but there is the aha moment that does come.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head when you say assess your relationships. Sometimes you could have a work buddy that maybe is not great. It could be toxic for you, and their outlook may differ from yours and not may align. And so that might take away from your joy, as you say. And then balance, making sure you take your lunch. I've been there charting and refused to take it because I just wanted to get through the day. Or just even staying late for work. So all of those resonate well in every specialty of nursing, not just, primary care, but also just working the unit, pediatric unit. So thank you so much for sharing. Don't know if we have any more questions coming through, but before we end, we want to thank you, Dr. Dolko, for taking time to be with us today. And thank you everyone for joining online. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And did you know 1 in every 8 women are diagnosed, approximately 2,000 men. So make sure that you be proactive and schedule your mammogram. And anyway, for more information, please make sure you go to Huddle Easy Talks and visit our nursescarehub.com. Bye, Dr. Dolko.
Bye-bye, thanks, Lizette.